Hello and welcome to Views on News. I'm your host Rafae Iqbal, and in today's show we'll be talking about the Arab Islamic Summit, the extraordinary session that was held, and of course Israel's adventurism in the Middle East region. We know of Israel's brutal aggression that it has been continuing. It started off from Palestine, it has now engulfed Lebanon as well. But the adventurism still continues with impunity as Israel now faces confrontation with Iran, throwing the Middle East region into further turmoil. If you talk about this aggression by Israel, of course, these atrocities that Israel has been committing, its blatant ignorance towards all the international calls. There was mass protest witnessed throughout the world. Of course, Israel's own strategic ally, the United States of America, it also witnessed its own version of the Arab Spring in the context of university protests. We know many other countries in Europe and the West, they have also condemned Israel's brutal aggression, such as countries like Ireland, Spain and Norway, which have also cut off diplomatic ties with Israel as it continues with its aggression. With regards to this aggression that Israel has been committing with impunity, South Africa filed a case in the International Court of Justice as well, which was backed by a lot of other world countries as well, calling on the ICJ to take action against Israel's brutal actions and the genocide that it has been committing in Palestine. But of course, and now as we know that Israel continues its actions with impunity, it has now went on to Lebanon and even a more serious escalation with Iran as well. And the Arab Islamic Summit that was held in Riyadh, it comprised of all the Muslim leaders, all the Arab leaders getting together at one place and for one sole cause: Israel's brutal aggression on the Palestinian territories, on the Lebanese people, and of course its escalation in the Middle East region, which is throwing the region into a very volatile situation. And of course, all the leaders present at the Arab Islamic Summit, they talked about Israel's brutal aggression. They continued, they expressed their call and continued support for their Palestinian and Lebanese brethren. And of course, they called upon firstly a ceasefire, an immediate ceasefire to take effect based on the two-state solution with pre-1967 borders and Al-Quds Al-Sharif as the capital of Palestine. And secondly, an arms embargo on Israel to stop it from its brutal aggression that it has been continuing, to stop it from the genocide of the Palestinian people that it has been continuing, and to stop it against the strikes and bombardment of the Lebanese territories as well. We'll be deliberating on all the different aspects regarding the Middle East situation and the Arab Islamic Summit, and of course the implications that this summit will have for the prospects of ceasefire. In the studios, we've been joined by Rear Admiral retired Faisal Shah, who is a senior analyst, and we've also been joined by Dr.Fida Bazai, who is an IR expert. I'd like to thank you all for your time and being part of the conversation. On Skype, we have been joined by my co-anchor, Jawad Tehami from the United States of America, who had went there to cover the US elections, but will be joining us on Skype with regards to the situation in the Middle East and the Arab Islamic Summit. Of course, starting off our conversation from Mr. Faisal Shah. Israel's brutality, sir, it's been over a year as we've been seeing them. They continue with impunity. There's been international calls, of course, there's been UN resolutions. There's a case filed against Israel in the ICJ itself, but still we see Israel continuing with its aggression with impunity. When do you think there's going to be a stop at this, and what do you think Israel? We know there's all of the international community, it is condemning Israel's actions at the moment. What does it want to achieve, having so much hate in the world with regards to its aggression that is committing on innocent people?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much for having me in this program on a very important topic. I think we need to understand that this moment is the most important moment throughout this Gaza crisis since 7 October. I think the first important moment was 7 October itself, and now it is the second most important moment happening in this Gaza conflict. Why? We need to understand that so far there was one country versus resistance movements. Now there are two very important countries of the Middle East region are in direct confrontation with each other, and I call them spades of Middle East, Iran and Israel. Iran attacked Israel, and then Israel attacked Iran, and now it's Iran turns and they say that they are preparing for an attack on Israel. Now, if these two important countries continue to attack each other, this is going to spill over this whole catastrophe to the region, not only to the region but beyond region, across the globe. The world trade, economy, and then there are so many other countries that are going to get engulfed in this. So I consider this moment as one very important epoch in this whole saga. And if this opportunity is missed, then there will be no ending to Gaza conflict. So this summit that is happening, Islamic Arab Summit, I think this is happening at the very right time. We need to make the world understand that if these two countries continue to attack each other, they remain engaged with each other in confrontation, this is going to drag not only the region but whole world into it. And what Israel is going to get in it, despite all condemnation, it is continuing. Why? Because I think this has become Netanyahu's personal war. The ideology, the territorial dispute, it has all been left behind. And according to the reports, since January this year.
And Mr. Faisal, what do you think that ideology is focused on? Is it focused on more settlerism or occupational mindset?
It is occupational mindset. They want to control the whole area. They have been controlling, but now they want to tighten their fist on the area, on the Palestinians. They want to actually finish this agenda once and for all. And this has political stake for Netanyahu. So he's continuing this war just for his own political capital. This we need to make the world understand, that if this opportunity, when Iran and Israel are in direct confrontation with each other, and because this war is now turning into the political agenda of Netanyahu, this is to be stopped right now. Otherwise, there will be no end. And I was about to tell you that according to some reports, since January, Israeli armed forces have been advising Netanyahu that we have achieved our objectives, now we must secure it, we must end it. But he has been pursuing it, and you see that few days back he fired his defense minister also on disagreement with him. So perhaps the disagreement was same, that we must not continue with this confrontation or abuse or genocide of Palestinians.
So it's a fascist mindset. Coming towards Dr. Fida, of course, so as we talk about, of course, there were UN resolutions that were passed. There was a case filed in the ICJ, but a more significant event that happened recently in the United Nations General Assembly session. It was something that was started off by the Pakistani Prime Minister Shah Sharif, as they posed a walkout from the UN General Assembly as the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu was about to address. And Prime Minister Shah Sharif was followed by other Arab and Muslim leaders. With regards to that, in the context of that event, of course, it became major headlines. And now, when we see the Arab Islamic Summit, do you think it would have major significance in raising voice against the Israeli atrocities and making the world powers actually realize that what Israel has been doing is not just hurting the Muslims in Palestine and Lebanon, but is also hurting the sentiments of Muslims all around the world?
Thank you, Rafae, for having me on this issue. I mean, one of the first casualty of this conflict in Israel is international system and international organizations and international values that have been established. Especially the West and particularly the United States had been preaching this thing that this is value-based international system, where no state would be allowed to go to that extent to kill innocent people, children, women. I mean, this is genocide of the 21st century. We have not seen a killing at this level without any discrimination. I mean, it is okay, they were having some grievances. 7th October could have been handled in many other way, but the way Israel has been doing it, it is definitely having many other objectives. What is unfortunate along with that, that the United States has given $18 billion to Israel only since the start of this war. So this war is not only happening in Israel, it is having a very strong backing from the United States. Definitely Muslim countries do not have any influence on Israel at the moment. The only place where they should be exercising their influence and raising their voices is the United States. The United States is the only actor at the moment which can influence Israel to stop its genocide in Gaza and stop expanding the war in Middle East.
But we don't see that happening anytime soon.
I am afraid that that support will multiply now, as the Trump has recently won election. If you go on his past statement or his foreign policy or his support for Israel, it is very unconditional. He is very vocal about this thing, that he would be supporting. He was rather the first president which went far beyond than his predecessor in supporting Israel, whether it was recognizing of Jerusalem as Israel capital, or bringing a kind of rapprochement between Israel, Saudi Arab and Bahrain, and then pressurizing Iran for that nuclear deal. So we do not see any good news coming from the United States, where which is the main theater of this war, where this war will be decided. Netanyahu will not settle for less, because there are corruption cases against him and his son and his coalition partner, his right-wing political party. They would definitely go as far in Middle East with immunity, because there is no power that could stop Israel from expansion. So the only power that will stop or can stop is the United States, which is not happening now. And the objective of this summit should be the United States. These Muslim countries are having an influence on United States, and now we can see that international system is no more the same as it was before. Although we have seen some positive statement from China coming from China that is opposing this war and opposing it very strongly. So in this moment, if a strong statement goes to the United States that if they do not support Israel in Gaza, Muslim world could go for blockade like something happened in 1973. Unfortunately, that is the only solution left, or only option left with the Muslim world.
Right. I'd like to include Jawad Tehami in the conversation as well, as he's joined us. And of course, I'd like to firstly ask him regarding his opinion with regards to, of course, the prospects for ceasefire. Of course, we know it has been talked about over and over again. But we saw no significant gains with regards to that. And now the Arab Islamic Summit has held, and all the leaders, all the Muslim leaders, all the Arab leaders taking part in that summit, they highlighted one specific thing: a ceasefire to be taken effect immediately, and secondly, an arms embargo on Israel. Jawad, how do you comment on the statements coming out of the Arab Islamic Summit? And of course, secondly,
Rafae, thank you.
Questions?
Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, there are a couple of questions. I'll definitely come to those questions. Since you asked, this particular mood that is happening in Riyadh now under the leadership of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, we have seen very strong statements coming to condemnation by the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman regarding this Israeli aggression on the innocent people in Gaza, and also Israel's expansion of its aggression into Lebanon. He has reaffirmed his support towards the innocent people in Gaza, as well as he has also reiterated the support of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in this particular forum towards Lebanon's territorial integrity and sovereignty. At the same time, also condemning Israel aggression in Gaza as an act of genocide. So a lot of leaders from the Arab and Islamic countries have gathered over here. We have also seen Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif also talking about the atrocities, talking about the indifference and inaction of the international community as far as Israeli aggression to stop that is concerned since 7th of October 2023 is concerned. So this particular mood holds an immense significance. So we really, all eyes are set on this particular mood as far as the formulation of a concrete policy or a strategy towards stopping Israel's aggression is concerned. And also, another important thing, the establishment of a Palestinian state. We'll see as to what basically the outcomes of this particular summit actually transpire to be. So when we talk about, there are a number of very important points which have been made by Rear Admiral Faisal Shah and Dr. Fida Bazai. So I would like to go questioning a couple of things regarding as to the earlier take by Admiral Shah. Admiral Shah, you talked of that this particular war has become more of a personal war of Benjamin Netanyahu, and he's got the political agenda. The thing which I've been curious about since long, since this particular aggression of Israel since 7th of October 2023, a lot of analysts are of the view that this particular war has taken that very shape of being a personal agenda or the political agenda of Netanyahu. We've also seen during this entire course since 7th of October 2023, there has been expression of unease on the part of US President Joe Biden towards Benjamin Netanyahu. A number of statements also made. What has emboldened Netanyahu to such an extent that he gets the opposition at home as well? The difference of opinion of going ahead and expanding this conflict further, that difference of opinion at home, the unease within the high ranks of the America also, and also the international condemnations. We have seen European countries also condemning this aggression. What has emboldened Netanyahu to such an extent that he is defying all that?
One great factor is the strong Jewish lobby in America, which has control of most of the financial institutions in America, and they have stronger say in their political dispensation and their policy making. So one big factor is that. Joe Biden has been supporting Israel, but if you see, there have been statements from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris both that the genocide in Palestine and the human rights violation must be stopped. Although they have not been pressing their foot down on Israel, but they have been actually giving these statements, and especially when Kamala Harris came into the race for US presidentship, she actually was quite vocal on that. So they have been trying to maintain balance, but obviously their support to Israel was more vivid than their statements on stopping the genocide. But now when President Trump is going to take over, I see one silver lining, that he has claimed that he is going to stop all the wars in the world. I don't know, but I'm afraid I don't on what terms? On what terms he is going to do that? Are these going to support Israel in totality, or are they going to support Palestinians also? So from this Arab Islamic Summit, I expect that we should actually remind US or President Trump of his pledges and promises and claims of stopping the wars. In parallel, we should present our case as a unified community that we want two-state solution of Palestine and Israel.
Right. Admiral Shah, this is a very important point that you have made. Dr. Fida Bazai has also talked about this particular role of the United States of America. Very importantly, we have to understand as to what could be the policy or the strategy of the Trump administration when it takes over power in January in order to deal with this particular issue in particular. So that's, of course, going to be interesting. Dr. Bazai, don't you think there could be a possibility on the part of the Trump administration to strategize in order to achieve any resolution to this particular conflict through a peace path, bringing all the stakeholders on the table, going for any viable solution? Is that a possibility? And in that case, there could be a possibility of establishment of the Palestinian state too.
Jawad, we can hope against hope in this case. What we can see from Trump statement, his previous policy, his track record, I don't have a lot of hopes from this administration to pressurize Israel or Netanyahu regime. If you have seen his campaign, he was very vocal and clear on this thing that if Israel has any real friend in the United States, it is Trump. So he is a very strong supporter of Israel. He does not have any doubt. He was the only president that banned Muslim entries in the United States. He was the president that was pressurizing Iran. He was the president that was very clearly has a very clear stance over this issue. That he will, I hope that he will go for a kind of the only solution, that the only force that can push him and Israel is now international community. If there is eye and cry at the international community.
Dr. Bazai, now international community had been asking the Israeli regime in order to reach for a ceasefire. We have seen that relentless shuttle diplomacy on the part of the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, running back and forth towards the Middle East, trying to bring in the mediators in also, like Qatar and Egypt. But we have seen no positive results out of those ceasefire talks that have been happening at the same time. We have seen also both the sides, Israel blaming the other side around the Palestinian resistance group against which it launched that particular aggression post 7th of October 2023, and that particular Palestinian resistance group pointing fingers at Israel being the stumbling block in reaching any sort of a ceasefire. So if this is your view that there isn't any much hope as far as Trump administration when it takes over power, so where do you see this particular conflict going ahead in future?
I mean, I said that if there is if there is no international pressure and international pressure does not succeed, then this could expand to other countries as well. As we have seen that it is already expanded to Lebanon, it can expand to Yemen, and it could trigger a war between Iran and Israel at this juncture. Middle East is at a very dangerous point at the moment.
Right. Of course, I'd like to come towards Mr. Faisal Shah with regards to a question that just came to mind. Of course, as we talk about the Arab Islamic Summit, and of course, we talk about the calls by the international community, the voices that were raised, and even the actions that were taken. But we know the United Nations, as it passed resolutions as well, but they couldn't have any effect in stopping Israel with continuing its aggression. The League of Nations, as the United Nations was once called before World War II, it proved ineffective and it had to be changed into the United Nations. Do you think the United Nations will have to be changed to something else as it has proven ineffective in this war in particular?
United Nations has proven the old jargon, might is right. So even if you expand it, there will be more might in it, more mights in it. So UN is perhaps not going to be very effective because the mights will always have their rights and will always have their way out. What I would like to reiterate, that we need to analyze this situation, which Dr. Fida has also said that it's very dangerous. Middle East is at a very dangerous juncture right now, and Iran, I think, is playing a very prudent strategy. Their attack on Israel has actually hyped the situation, and now their calls for preparation for again attacking Israel is actually asking world leaders to look towards this region, because it's going to be dragged into a bigger calamity than it is right now. So I think this movement has to be capitalized upon. If this fleeting opportunity is missed, then there will be no end.
Well, definitely, of course, it's a juncture and a very crucial juncture indeed. Dr. Fida, I'd like your views as well with regards to, of course, when you talk about international platforms that address international issues. The United Nations, it was supposed to put an end to this war with the number of calls from the international voices that we were hearing. But now, as we see the Arab Islamic Summit having its second summit now and its second session, and the world leaders the Islamic leaders, the Arab leaders, they have been reiterating this call for a ceasefire and an arms embargo. Do you think, of course, with the United Nations proving ineffective, there's other space for other platforms like the Arab Islamic Summit to fill up that vacuum?
Rafae, do you remember the last time the United Nations stopped a war between two states? No, because it does not have that kind of mechanism. It is not capable of doing this thing. It is not developed for this purpose. It can only do some charity and welfare thing, and manage some soft political issues on which there is no difference of opinion, like human rights, some kind of climate change, cultural show. This is what the United Nations has been doing, and is good in doing it, because it has been designed in such a way. It has not been vested with power to stop such a kind of genocide. I wish it was effective and there was a mechanism of conflict resolution in the United Nations. The world would have been a better place. Unfortunately, all the major power did not trust the United States enough to give it power and to make it powerful enough to stop such a casualties, like such a catastrophe that is taking place in Egypt at the moment. The only solution is regional blocs and power diplomacy, and there should be a clear statement going from the Muslim world that the way Israel is been expanding the war in Middle East, it is going to be catastrophe for the entire region. That is not only, this war will not only stop at the border of Lebanon or at the border of Yemen or only with Iran. It will be expanding to the entire Middle East, to Syria, to Iraq, even Saudi Arabia one day. So all the economic development that is taking place at the moment is in danger from this war, the way Israel is acting with immunity and the way United States has been supporting without any apology. So it could even trigger a bigger war between states.
Right, and Dr. Fida, as you mentioned economic development, do you think when we talk about making our voices more recognizable to the world, making our voices more hearable to the world, do you think an economic or oil or trade embargo would help the Arab or Islamic countries in, of course, getting their voices more heard, and of course showing that this is something that of course is destabilizing the region and it's hurting all the countries of the region?
Precisely. So it is now equally important for all Arab countries to stop this conflict and stop this genocide. It is not only creating emotional disturbance in the Muslim world, this could turn into a political instability. This could trigger political moment in Middle East. So there are people who would be asking for change, for support of Israel. So this is not only important for Israel, for Palestinians themselves. All Arab countries and all Muslim countries should at least stand on this one agenda united. That this is what brought all Muslim countries along with Kashmir at the beginning together, that they are having two issues in which every Muslim country has similar position. So now is the time to convert their voices and support into actions and come with concrete policy to stop genocide in Gaza.
Right, and Mr. Faisal, in your opinion, of course, it's a very practical strategy that Dr. Fida has highlighted. How do you think cooperation between the Arab and Muslim countries, they could be further increased, so of course they can better deal with such problems of the region, such problem facing the Muslim Ummah with a more concerted efforts? How do you think cooperation needs to be increased between all these countries?
I think one good thing that has come out of this Gaza conflict is that all Muslim countries are now together. They are showing cohesion. This Islamic Arab Summit is also a symbol of cohesiveness. And this is second time, I tell you. Few months back, when Israel was preparing, not few months back, few weeks back, when Israel was preparing to attack Iran, it asked for use of airspace of Gulf countries, and they refused it. So it had to use the airspace of Syria and Iraq, who could not stop it. So that was the first time that the cohesion was displayed by all the Gulf countries, and now this is the second time that whole Muslim world is gathered, their leadership is there, and they are united in demanding dialogue, in demanding ceasefire, in demanding stopping the genocide, and in demanding of talking about the two-state solution of Palestine-Israel conflict. So this crisis has actually brought us all on the same platform. You see, Iranian president did not attend this summit, but he called personally to Prince Mohammed bin Salman and expressed his satisfaction that and gratitude that this conference has been called on this important aspect. So what does it show? It shows that we all are on the same platform, we all are together, and we should continue doing it no matter what.
Unified voice. So of course, Dr. Fida, there's one angle I'd also like you to comment about before we move towards Jawad. That is, there's two areas, occupied areas in the world that are being called open-air prisons. The one is occupied Kashmir, in which India has, it continues with its aggression on the innocent Kashmiri population. And secondly, we see the innocent Palestinian people facing occupation from the Israeli forces and the brunt of those occupation forces as well. When we talk about the ideologies between the two, there's some similarities as well, such as both focus on hegemony and fascism. Of course, when we talk about an arms embargo as well, we know India has been supplying weapons to Israel in this conflict as well. When the whole of the world community was talking about stopping supplies of arms to Israel. How do you comment on this nexus, considering you're an expert on international relations, and how dangerous this nexus of two very extremist ideologies could prove for the world?
I mean, this is not setting a good precedent. The way Israel is acting with immunity, I told in the beginning, the first casualty of this war is definitely people are in Gaza are the casualty, but the first casualty is international system. How can now the West stand tall and claim moral values on any issue? People will be reminding them all the time that what happened in Gaza when they were standing silent and saying nothing. Although there are some protests taking place in Europe, in UK, in US, but what matter is government policy.
Do you think the ineffectiveness of the world system would be a disappointment for the Kashmiri people, as they're also struggling for 7 decades to secure their right to self-determination, considering what Israel is doing in Palestine, and of course the same India is doing in Kashmir?
It is a disappointment for all oppressed ideologies, all oppressed nations. Now there is no hope for them. It is kind of, it is the power, it is the politics of power that is taking over the politics of values. So international system is no more based upon values. There is no more respect for the right of self-determination. There is no more respect for the right for human rights, for children rights. So everything that matter is power, violence and blood. Now it looks like every issue will be settled by the use of power and through violence. If this become the norms in international system, it will be triggering instability in every part of the world, because there is a flashpoint in every region.
Definitely. Moving towards Jawad Tehami. Jawad, the floor is all yours. I'm sure you have a lot of questions for the guests that we have in the studios.
Okay, so a lot has been talked about during today's discourse, and a lot of important points have been made by our worthy guests over there in the studios, Dr. Fida Bazai and Rear Admiral Faisal Shah. This particular question goes to both of them. First, I would like Admiral Shah to answer this particular question as to what his understanding about the role. We have seen the term or the word of disappointment already being used quite a couple of times here. And we also have heard about the inefficiency of the United Nations. It is not equipped with such a mechanism to go for a conflict resolution. Doesn't that call for a prompt reformation or the reforms at the United Nations, particularly when we come to the understanding of the role of the P5 at the United Nations Security Council, more inclusivity and more democratization of this United Nations Security Council platform, so that and how this collective voice, as Admiral Shah has also mentioned earlier, that it is heartening to see that the entire Muslim world is having a consensus. They have a collective voice at this particular moment through this Arab Islamic Summit. How this particular factor could play in future in order to get the reforms at the UNSC.
I think this Islamic Arab Summit is probably first step or a stepping stone towards calling for reforms in United Nations, and it is a display of disbelief in United Nations functioning. But how these reforms are going to take place, that's a big question, because P5 are already there, and for them their interests are supreme. I mean, they call for, no matter how many times, for human rights violations in different parts of the world, or so many condemning atrocities. But what is happening under their nose in Gaza is open to everybody. So I personally don't see any hope in bringing reforms to United Nations, or any success of those reforms in United Nations. It's the world of might is right, and we must show our might to the world, be it political, be it economic, be it military. Whatever we can do, we must do it, and we must show to the world that we are unified, we have one stance, we have one resolution, and we call for implementation of our demands and our just resolution, maybe through UN or without UN.
Right. Dr. Bazai, what's your understanding regarding any sort of reforms being brought into the United Nations Security Council, more inclusivity, more democratization of the UNSC, so that there could be the solutions to such type of conflicts if they arise in future promptly and immediately?
Jawad, expecting any reform in the structure of United Nation is living in a fool paradise. It has been structured in a way that there is no possibility of reforms. The purpose of creating this system was basically to make it for that purpose. It was not to take power from the powerful countries and make it a deciding force. What this time is telling the Muslim world, that they are united, that they are connected by emotions, that they are one nation. They are divided by separate boundaries, they are separate states, but their emotion is one when it comes to atrocities against any other Muslim country. So it is the time for all Muslim countries to come together and galvanize toward this effort and create a concrete block in order to stop such a kind of casualties in future. Although it is too much to ask from them, but if there is any time, this is the right time. This is the only time when it is uniting all Muslim countries, irrespective of their ideologies, irrespective of their political interests. They all are standing together over this one issue against Israel in support of Palestinian. So this sentiment now should be converted into a political statement and strategy to create a bloc in order to stop such a kind of disaster in future.
Okay, so Dr. Fida Bazai and Admiral Shah, Rafae, I hope there is a couple of minutes left. So this is an important question I would like to pose to both of the participants. A quick answer from both of them regarding as to if this particular consensus among all the Muslim and Arab countries goes on to understand that there could be a possibility of any sort of a blockade towards Israel. At the same time, keeping in view the relentless support of the United States of America towards Israel, don't you think it's going to be an uphill task in order to navigate through that corridor while keeping the US also in contact with the Arab countries and not to make the new administration feel perhaps that its support towards Israel uh, is going to have any sort of a drastic impact later on?
I think the difference between last year's summit and this year's summit is that last year there were disagreements among Muslim countries on how to treat Israel or how to engage with Israel or how to disengage with Israel. But this year it seems that everybody is on the same platform. So this is a display of cohesiveness that this summit is actually going to portray to the US. Now, I told you that set aside UN, we have no hopes from UN. Now we are gathered together and we must chart a strategy, what all we can do to pressurize US to pressure Israel and stop this genocide. Now this is, I think, the job of all the leadership that has come under one roof and discussing this sad saga of Palestinian genocide. And this will have consequences, obviously. And you see, US support to Israel was manifested after oil crisis in 70s. So if this happens again, there will be repercussions also. This is what we have to analyze and chart a strategy for that.
And Mr. Faisal, with regards to that, as we talked about regional bloc politics as well, do you think it could move on from just Arab and Islamic countries, because there are other countries that are not Islamic countries, yes, but they've also supported the Palestinian cause and of course their right to self-determination. Do you think the scope of the Arab-Islamic Summit should be expanded to those countries that are not Islamic but support the ideology behind the summit?
Absolutely, yes. And you see that SCO excuse me, SCO communique that was dished out, it also addressed this Gaza conflict and it also condemned Israeli atrocities in Gaza. So there are so many like-minded countries, because this is a crime against humanity. This is not a crime against any particular sect or religion, it's against humanity. So whoever's people are sane in the world there, I think they should all be gathered on the same platform, and this Arab Islamic Summit actually should reach out to those countries who are in consonance with the same ideology of humanity, and we should actually form a pressure group.
Dr. Fida, I'd like your concluding remarks as well. From what I gathered from your arguments was that we need to put our own house in order and have a more unified approach towards getting this issue resolved. But I'd like your concluding remarks as well.
On 2 points. One has the structure of support existing in the United States for Israel is unthinkable. Any congressman cannot even think of getting elected without support from the Jewish lobby in the United States. So this is the level of support in the United States for any politician. I mean, this is the structure of United States where their lobbying and financial muscles are so strong that even they cannot dare to oppose the Israel on minor issues. Forget about opposing them on the issue of Gaza. Second, there are some countries like South Africa and China. Their relation with the Palestinian cause is bigger and greater than Muslim association with Gaza. They were the same countries that were struggling together for the right of self-determination, and these three countries were having a very strong support. That was Cuba was strongly supporting Gaza issue and Palestinian cause. South Africa has been supporting Palestinian cause, and China has been supporting Palestinian cause. That is no doubt that all other like-minded countries could also be called upon to stop genocide in Gaza.
Well, of course, these are very important points, and of course, points that will help to curb down the tensions in the Middle East region, and of course, provide a solution to the Palestinian issue, as all the Arab Islamic leaders have today reiterated. A two-state solution is the only solution to the Palestinian issue, of course, with pre-1967 borders and Al-Quds Al-Sharif as its capital. That was all that we had from the conversation regarding the Arab Islamic Summit that was held today and Israeli adventurism in the Middle East region. Of course, we discussed the different prospects regarding all of the implications that Israel's action could unfold in the region. And we'll see, we hope, saner voices prevail throughout the world and we hope to see a world of peace with regards to as stopping Israeli aggression, and of course may saner voices prevail. With that, Rear Admiral Faisal Shah, Dr. Fida Bazai, I'd like to thank you both for your time and being part of the conversation. I'd also like to thank my co-anchor, Jawad Tehami, who had joined us from the US over Skype. Thank you for your time as well, Jawad. With that, we'll wrap up Views on News. That's all we have for today. See you same time tomorrow. Till then, take care.